So, to get us started, what did we cover last week?
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Run for your life.
Thank you. That was the most important thing you needed to know, is run for your life. That was good advice, wasn't it?
Well, I thought I had that written down somewhere.
You did. You wrote a bunch of stuff down. I don't know what you done with it after you wrote it, but you did write it down. So, anything else we covered last week on our commandment? So we remember that the first 5 was dealing with our relationship and dealing with God. And then the last set is more of dealing with our relationship with others. Now, we said that commandments 6, 7, and 8 are all, by the Hebrew Greek language, is 2-word commandments. They were given to us in 2 words, which was no adultery, no murder, things of that nature. And as we continue tonight, we're getting into our next one. We're going to look at some stuff. And if we look, let me just give this to you. If we look at our commandment tonight, things are pretty straightforward. If you look at this from a perspective of just what it is, things are pretty straightforward. I mean, there ain't much to figure out in 4 words in our Bible that says, thou shalt not steal. If we went right now and polled most churches, and I mean most, out of the majority of people in the churches, how many do you think would have a young age Sunday school understanding of this commandment? What do you think?
Pretty straightforward there.
Seems like it, don't it? I agree with you. It does seem like it. I do. Sharon's working on it over for just a minute. She's struggling for just a moment with the testaments. So, let me just say that there's all these things you do and don't suspect, and things you do and don't expect. And I'm going to give you an example before we dive in tonight on this commandment, this easy 4-word commandment right here. None of the parents suspected Sister Mary Margaret Rupert of anything, nor could they account for the school's continuous shortfall in funding. For 28 years, Sister Mary Margaret had been the principal at the St. James Catholic School in California. And in 2021, a federal judge sentenced her to 1 year and 1 day in a federal penitentiary for wire fraud and money laundering. He also, after giving her a year and a day in a federal penitentiary, he also ordered her to repay $835,339 that she embezzled from the school. On top of her 1 year and 1 day, she had to repay the $835,339. And she said in her very thing, this is what her statement was. She'd been a nun for 62 years. Okay? The principal of the school, after teaching for years, the principal of the school for 28. And her very first thing that she said is, she said, I have no excuses. I have sinned and I have broken the law. And the 80-year-old nun confesses to this before the judge. But the judge had trouble. Number one, because of her age, at the age of 80, it's pointless to give her 30 years in the penitentiary. She's not going to live it to pull the 30 years. Her years of service as an educator to children, her religious devotion to being a nun for 62 years, but yet the judge said in the case that some form of punishment was necessary. Now, the first thing that runs through your mind when you deal with this, and you see this stuff on the news, all these people getting charged with embezzlement and whatever, defrauding money and embezzling money and all this, but that brings us to the statement, and this very common statement is going to come up tonight in what we're studying about not stealing. Have you ever heard anybody say this? You just never know about people.
Yeah, I say it all the time.
Okay.
Every day.
So, So let's think about this now. Have you ever thought about the fact that if you can't trust a nun to manage a school and the children and the money, what about your financial advisor? What about the bank? I mean, can you trust them? Do they steal from people? Do you know? I'm sure it happens. I'm sure there's proof somewhere that somebody working at the bank steals money out of people's accounts, just pennies at a time. The financial advisor writes you up and gives himself extra commission. So who can you trust when it comes down to you just don't really know people in the effort of what they may or may not be doing? So when you think about that and you think about who you can trust, it just puts us into perspective tonight that the people that you would not expect to do things is the ones showing up on the news that did something. Doctors is an easy example. You'll get a doctor that'll get in trouble for writing medicines to family members or writing certain prescriptions to certain people without meeting compliance or whatever it is. There's always something that these people do. And then it turns these people around to thinking, well, I trusted them. I trusted him. He's my doctor. He writes my heart medicine to keep me alive. And he's in jail. Just think about that process for a moment. Think about that valuement of what we're talking about. So Roger Cook's going to read us 2 verses in Leviticus 19 for a reason, of 2 very things that is re-quoted by the 4-word commandment we're studying tonight. So listen to what this says.
Ye shall not steal, neither deal falsely, neither lie one to another. Ye shall not swear by my name falsely, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord.
And 13. Yep.
Thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob the wages of him that is hard shall not abide with thee all night until the morning.
So Moses said in Leviticus that you're not to steal or defraud or rob your neighbor. Don't hold back a worker's wages overnight to the next day. God implied at this very point in Leviticus 19 his approval on private property ownership. See, up until this time, we didn't really have properties. We didn't have, what do we want to call, property lines, boundaries until this time. But now we see God placing his actual approval on private property ownership and what we will call social order. Social order is something that seems to be very out of hand in today's time. But however, it began and started at the point when God's approval came on people having their own property, their own things. And we're going to look at that in a moment. In 2020, does anybody remember the murder of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police officers? Okay. So what happened in that time is this huge protest right here. The people was gathering in Minneapolis as well as tons of large cities. I do remember there's something in Knoxville about this same time. But they wanted the police defunded. Get rid of it. Just defund the police and stop it. So in the town of San Francisco, the mayor and the city council did it. They cut the funds down to where the police coverage was so scarce that they also announced that they would no longer respond to a shoplifting call. So if you owned a business and you had a person come in and shoplift and you called for police, they just told you they weren't coming because they didn't have to. And so therefore they didn't respond. The crime rate in San Francisco became so bad that all of these businesses, they shut their doors, they sent their employees to the house. Other businesses refused to have their store in the city limits because there was no enforcement of the law. And neighborhoods, this is what ends up happening in San Francisco as well as some other cities that tried to defund their police. Do you know what else went away in the cities? What else do you think that done? The effect of defunding the police and them not having police to respond, and they weren't intentionally responding to shoplifting and some other misdemeanor level crimes. What else you think that caused?
Well, wouldn't that take care of the bar and all them other fellas?
Well, no, if you own a business and you're there carrying out thousands a day in shoplifting, and the police are never gonna come do anything about it, because they're not coming. They stopped, literally stopped.
Somebody's not
Did not go.
Christmas.
What else happens when that starts?
You have a right.
Can? What else? What else can happen?
I just like one business.
Okay? That's exactly what happened. And the very things that closed was the drugstores, the grocery stores, the convenience markets, gas stations. They just shut their doors, quit, and moved elsewhere and opened business up somewhere else. So protests that enforced some influence on some politicians ended up taking it so bad, it got so bad that they started losing so much money in their tax base and everything else, that they actually reinstated the funding to the budget. And they started increasing the budget over a few months' time to put the police force back, and then they started responding to shoplifting calls. Because the defunding of this created such a problem with stealing that when there was no social order and there was no order to things and things weren't being handled, it got so out of hand that the businesses just said, no, we're not doing it, and they closed. So then you wouldn't get to go to Kroger's, you wouldn't go to Food City, you wouldn't be buying gas, and you wouldn't be getting your medicine because they're not going to do shoplifters. And so they shut the businesses down. There is power to make money. That's the first thing we need to look at. When we're going to talk about stealing or theft, there's power to make money. And I pulled this quote up before we read our next verse to see something about it. It says, theft is rooted in contempt for others. It's the false notion that what's yours ought to be mine. And if I can't get it by another means, then I'll just take it for myself. That's the power to make money. Who had, let's see, Robert had Ephesians 4:28. What does that say?
Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands.
Stole, steal no more, and then let him labor working with his hands. Keep going.
The thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that eateth.
Okay. The thing that which is good. There's only 3 ways that we can acquire. I never thought about that until we got to the stealing part. There's only 3 ways you can acquire wealth and property. Only 3 ways. Anybody know what those are?
Inherit it,
All right.
work
or
steal it.
Or steal it. There's only 3 ways you can get money or property. And the only ways to gain wealth is to steal it, work for it, or inherit it. That's it. That's the only 3 cumulative ways that this works. The Bible actually this is true. The Bible actually assumes that we are going to acquire property. And there's nothing wrong with it or even possessions. But the Bible also assumes that we're going to acquire those things legitimately, not illegitimately. And so looking at it and how the things we acquire goes into a lot about stealing. I got a question for you. What's the most common form of acquiring wealth and property?
Probably inherited.
Huh?
Inherited.
I say the lottery.
No, you work for it.
Work for it.
Yeah. The verse that Robert just read says that he should do a good work with his what?
Hands.
Hands. Performing it with his hands as good. Good. Okay? So think about it this way. The Lord provides us with the necessary talents, the intellect, and the opportunities for everyone committed to working for their own property. God provides those necessary things through talents, intellect, and opportunities for everyone committed to working for their own property. All right, Deuteronomy 8:18. What's that say?
But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware
Moses told the second generation Israelites right before they're about to enter the promised land this very thing that Jimmy read. And this verse means the very thing that he gives us everything necessary to earn a living to take care of our own household. Do you know why most households don't make money and survive?
Lazy.
They don't work. They don't work. I mean, it's true.
They don't.
There are other circumstances, I agree to that. And there are circumstances that people do get in a bind or struggle or whatever. But Moses told them before they got into the promised land, this very verse meaning to give us everything necessary for us to be able to earn a living so we can take care of our own household. Now, our 2 Thessalonians 3 that long lost Jennifer is going to read us here is something else that Paul instructs us the same as Moses. What's that say?
For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. For we hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. Now them that are such we command and exhort by our Lord Jesus Christ, that with quietness they work and eat their own bread.
I have some of these verses posted at work sometimes, and people get real worried when that starts appearing, because that means if they don't do something their own, I'm going to find them something to do. Moses' instructions is coming the same play that Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians 3. And if we lived by some of the rules of the Bible and pushed it to the limit, how would it go if it says that anyone not work, they don't eat?
Well, we'd have a lot of people starving with that.
There sure would be a lot of people starving to eat. I agree with that. And some that walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but they're busybodies. Those are talented people. They look like they're working, and they got somebody believing they are, but they're not doing anything. Paul also continued with Sharon's verse in 1 Timothy 5, said something else about this. 5 and 8.
We scream.
She's got it right there.
I got it right here.
5 and 8.
Alright, that's the right thing.
What's
But
it
if
say?
any provide not for his own, especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel.
Do you know that work was always part of God's plan? Where did work begin?
In the garden,
Where? What happened
they
in the
had to
garden?
take care of the,
So he put them in the garden to do what?
can,
Dress and keep it, tend it, keep it up. So we are actually, if we have a job description tonight, I'm going to give you a job description by the Bible. You are commanded to serve as an overseer or a manager of God's creation. Just like Adam and Eve, we are commanded to be an overseer or a manager of God's creation. Now, another means of acquiring our property or wealth goes back to our inheritance. And Ginger has a verse for that in Proverbs 13 and 22. What does that tell us?
A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just.
Okay. What all does an inheritance mean? Let's start right there. If you get an inheritance from someone that passes away, what does that say? What, in your own words, tell me what that says.
you get something that they have worked for and saved up.
Okay? What?
They left you something of theirs
Okay?
for you to have.
Yeah? Anybody else got anything to add to that? We get into tangible things. That's what we're referring to right now in inheritance. We're getting into tangible things. But with an inheritance comes a person that had a good example and a good name. If they worked for many years and had money that you inherit after they die, then they've worked for it, then they have set a good work ethic example for everybody under them in the family, their children, grandchildren, whoever, and as an inheritance is an example of their work ethic and what they done, as well as a good name, the tangible things that go. But in ancient Israel days, the ability to bequeath the wealth to your grandchildren. If I'm recalling this correctly, the ability to give inheritance to your grandchildren was the supreme test to a family and their ability to prosper generationally. If the person had the ability to bequeath the wealth to the grandchildren, that was the supreme test to a family's ability to prosper generationally, meaning that an inheritance could go on and on and on. All of those things. Now, we have Robert Rogers in here. Now, their dad started, and then they started into building houses. So they inherited the business. That's what they did. They inherited the business. Roger got tired and quit on Robert and went home. But they inherited the business. Now, with that, just taking on building the houses that you all's done doing with your dad, y'all started working with him, and then after he passes, they keep doing it. But what is still there as the inherited business? The name's one. Because somebody could walk in and say, well, now, their dad would never have done that. He would have never built that roof like that. You know, he wouldn't have left that floor uneven over there in that corner. No, listen, Mr. Cook would not have done that. You see, there's more that comes with the inheritance than tangible property. You know what I'm saying? There's more that comes with the inheritance than just tangible things. If they keep building houses, there's an expectancy. And what carries that is people see something else they've built, and they want it built as good or better. You know, make it even better than the last one you built. And that requirement stands. That name, that example, that worth ethic stands and continues on. And so, as we see an inheritance tonight being things which was starting as property in the days that the Lord gave the command, thou shalt not steal, it gets into some interesting things comparing to today. I'm going to give you some FBI information. Here's some FBI info. In 2022, the FBI reported there was 847,000 burglaries. That's 269 causes for every 100,000 people. So 300 is guaranteed to have a problem. There is a break-in the United States every 26 seconds. Homes without a security system are 300% more likely to be broken into and burglarized. 46.9% of people don't have a home security system installed in their home. 83% of would-be burglars check for the presence of an alarm system before attempting the break-in, and 34% of the burglars use the front door when they come in. Police only solve 12% of burglary cases as of right now. 12%. Yet there's one every 26 seconds of someone stealing somebody's things, taking something from somebody. You say this is it. Well, no. Let's just look at stealing a little bit more. All right, Haley and Dylan's over here, so I'm going to use them for examples. All right. Now this is just some examples I thought of out of the box for you tonight about thou shalt not steal. One of them is this. If they cheat on a test, they're stealing.
Because you're passing someone else's work off as yours?
You sure are. You're stealing. Just remember that. You're breaking the commandments. Employees that take supplies home.
Well, I'm a teacher, so that's the opposite.
Well, I know you take it to the
Home
school. Yeah, I get it. Neighbors who forget to return borrowed items.
Well, that's me.
Oh, no. And then, I love this one. I've got to tell you this one. Stealing others' ideas and claiming as their own. So a pastor, I'm going to use this because I seen this last week. A pastor put a post on Facebook that said that he taught a class online and in his church on a Wednesday night about something. And to help everybody study it, he gave them a printed thing in their class to write notes and know how to keep it in the right order. And he gave it out in the class he was teaching. And the next Sunday after church, he has a woman knock on his door. And she says, Pastor so-and-so, she said, I watched your class on Wednesday night because we don't have church. She said, but you'll never guess what happened at my church this Sunday. And he said, what? She said, our pastor handed out that very paper you gave in your class and verbatim preached the very same thing you taught in your class. He said, well, I don't have no problem listening and following and teaching from it. He said, but at least give me some credit. If you're gonna take my whole work and teaching for an hour and use it as your sermon, at least give some credit to where this come from. But stealing it and claiming it as your own is a means of theft you have taken. Like all them special things that Ginger does in the plays, the acting. If you start taking her way, I mean, you know, you're taking it as your own whimsical idea, and she's come up with it on her own. Who knows what she's going to come up with? There are several types of theft right now by law. Does anybody know any types of theft right now by law?
Well, that's got plagiarism, so.
Okay. What other types of theft are there? Anybody give me some examples? Ginger, don't worry, it's just a 4-word verse, thou shalt not steal. You're looking straight. But how many types of theft are there? I'll give you some top ones. Here's your top ones. Larceny. Unlawful taking of personal property with the intent to permanently deprive the owner of it. Robbery. Committed with the use or threat of violence. Burglary is breaking and entering a premise with the intent of committing a felony such as theft inside. Embezzlement, identity theft, motor vehicle theft, intellectual property theft, and cyber theft.
Oh my goodness, flash of genius, that is the best example of that intellectual property theft.
Mm-hmm. Intangible property. Yeah.
The intellectual property theft where Ford tries to steal the engineers'
Well, there's
windshield wipers.
yeah, and there's a big lawsuit with Dr. Pepper right now because of someone trying to steal their logo and something in their recipe.
That's what I used that to be my engineering class to talk about ethics and.
Yeah, I mean that's this is some of the most common types of theft today. Then we're going on into we're still into stealing. Some other options that gets us in there is when we get into this word right here, being dishonest. We have laws. Now just think about this. Have you ever thought about the fact that we have laws regulating weights and measures? Do you know that? Mm-hmm. We have laws that regulate weights and measures. And I'll give you what the law manual says that are pretty standard about weights and measures. Legal units of measurement for length, weight, volume, and area. Devices, anything you use, a scale, a pump, or measuring tape, must be approved and regularly tested and stamped to ensure accuracy. If they sell anything with weight, volume, or number, must be marked with the correct quantity in the manner prescribed by law. Fair trade, prohibiting the possession or use of false or defective equipment, ensures that both consumers and sellers are treated fairly in transactions. Your consumer protection, the overarching goal is to protect consumers from being shortchanged and support businesses operating in a fair market. And then lastly, government departments are responsible for enforcing regulations through verification and by penalizing violations. So the scales at the grocery stores, they have to be calibrated and they do a preventative maintenance check on them at least every year. They have to check it.
They do gas pumps too.
Gas pumps have a sticker on the pump that tells when they...
There's Big Bunny and calibrated gas pumps.
Yes, so there's an inspection sticker you see on the gas pump when you buy the gas. That means that the inspector has came and proven that when you pay for 1 gallon, there's a gallon in your gas tank. See, not only can you steal, but then who you buy from can steal from you. And so there are laws that are limiting the requirements of weights and measures. If Robert and Roger, if we didn't have that, they could sell them 2x4s all day long and they'd be 2 by 3 1/4 and a ½ inch short. They could do it all day long and rob them, steal from them, and then paying for something that they are advertised as being sold for. So I don't know if y'all have seen the videos. Y'all seen the videos where the people go into the grocery stores and the meat departments and they take all that pre-packed meat and they go up to the produce section and put it on the scale? Y'all seen that? Most of the time the weights never match. If you buy a 5-pound pack of chicken, it'll say 4.3 or it'll say something else. And all these people are going up front and making them lower the price because the label printed on the pre-packed Tyson chicken and some of the others is not what it is on the scale in their store. It does not weigh that on the scale that's been provenly calibrated. And they are actually either pulling it off the shelf or giving them the lower price. Who had Proverbs 11:1?
Me.
What does that say?
A fair balance is abomination to the Lord. I mean, a false
False.
balance. But a just weight is his delight.
Dishonesty in itself, if you're dishonest in the attempt of robbing anybody, then now we're listing it as an abomination to God. So now the 4 words of thou shalt not steal has now made itself to being dishonest intent to rob someone is now an abomination. There are many types of being dishonest. I've done this one right here I'm going to show you before, and I do it every now and then for fun. But you talk about having women panic in the emergency room, this is how I do it. I'm going to show you all the trick. When you put them on the scale to see how much they weigh, put your foot on it in the back. And they'll look at you and say, it's not right. It's not right. They'll say, I don't weigh that much. It's not right. And I look at them and say, prove it. Prove it. Because I'm looking at the scale and it's saying you weigh 40 pounds more than you say you do. And so I do that a lot of times, and they'll look at you with a horrific look on their face because I got my foot on the back. You can't see it. They don't know it's there. And I'm pushing as hard as I can. I might add 50, 60 pounds sometimes to it on purpose. And they are going nuts, and they're saying, that scale's not right, ma'am. There's a sticker right there that says it was inspected. And she said, well, it's not right. Prove it. Prove the dishonesty. Prove me how it's wrong. And they'll shake their head. I don't believe that. No, that ain't right. I've got one at home. Then I ask them, well, has yours at home been inspected? Is it accurate? And, here the fear just sets in their mind of, oh, my gosh, is which one's right. So dishonesty plays a big problematic role. And the big one is this is where we get into the dishonesty line, is in the intentions. If it's to take advantage of someone to their material loss, then we've got problems. I'm going to give you another easy one that is stealing from you, that is dishonesty. This is always an easy one that's really good. You've got the used car salesman. Honey, this thing is a gem. It may only have 400,000 miles, but it's just like the day it come off the lot. There's not a scratch on it. This thing's as solid as the day it was built. I know there looks like a little bit of rust, but don't pay no mind to that. It's all good. Do you know that dishonesty in 2025 has become so sophisticated in the internet age and technology age that it's above mind-blowing to be how dishonest things really are. At work, they fire up on us all the time about the phishing emails. Have you ever got the email that says that your payment is due to something that you actually do own, or your payment did not go through and you need to click this link? You text messages, the spam mails, all them you get about to call about your insurance or something else, and it wants you to call or click the link. And then people do, and they think it's legit. It looks real, so they put in the information, and what happens?
It's hell.
Their bank account gets empty.
Yeah, mine's been a traffic ticket.
Huh?
Mine's been a traffic ticket.
So, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah, I've had traffic tickets.
Yeah, but
Look.
I really believe them, like.
That's because you
I
get it.
got one and.
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
know.
But things like that, identity theft, all these things are stealing from you. That is a form of theft to you or to someone else. If any of you in here sell cars behind the tree and tell them how good of a car it is and this is the situation, then you yourself are stealing from them. So when we look at thou shalt not steal tonight, we get into some other forms of stealing. We're expanding those 4 words. We've been talking about all the ways that you can be robbed or you can rob someone. But now we're getting ready to hit the nail on some thou shalt not steals that you probably have not considered, that are all in the Bible. So Brandon has Proverbs 3, 27, and 28. Tell us what that says.
Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it. Say not unto thy neighbor, go and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when thou hast it by thee.
Okay. This one's a big one. Thou shalt not steal. Not paying what we owe. When we have debts to pay and the money to pay it, we should pay. Everybody agree with that? Ain't that pretty straightforward? What happens when we owe someone and we defraud them, and although that debt is owed, we are not paying it? It starts defrauding other people. based off of our transactions. If someone files bankruptcy or defaults on a debt, credit card's my example we're using, then the creditor doesn't just eat the loss like everybody assumes. No, they pass it on to everybody that is paying the credit card bill with a 24, 19, 30% interest rate, and they pass it on to the customers that many who could pay something on their debts chose not to. It's not that they could pay the debt off in full. It's the fact they could have paid something on the debt and they chose not to. Now, not only have they stole from the creditor that gave them the money or the loan or whatever it was, but they also have stolen from the customers that's now having to pay what you did not pay in, because they're eating it now on the rising interest rates and all these problems. They'd rather defraud the creditors by defaulting and stealing from them and from other people, because not only are they thinking they're getting ahead by not having to pay back what they've got. If you get, and there's people right now, do you know what the average credit card debt is in this area? Throw a number.
I don't have one, so I don't know.
That's great. Keep it that way.
Mine's zero.
Huh?
Mine is zero.
What do you think the average household credit card debt is?
Probably about 15,000.
15 to 20. Most people, the average household with a credit card or cards right now are averaging 15 to 20,000. They're just paying interest. They're literally paying nothing but interest. They're not paying back what they owe. The debt they owe to the creditor, they're not paying. After a few short years, the advertising comes that if you want to get out of credit card debt, you sign up for this relief company. Do you know what that relief company does? I'll give you a little education for a moment. You know what they do? They tell you to quit paying all your bills. They don't tell you they'll come repo your car or anything else you owe, but stop paying all payments and let them lay there. And you'll go for 6 to 8 months and not touch them and not pay a dime, and you'll get every threat of turning over to collections and everything else. And eventually, about month 8 or 9, this relief company comes in and gets all them debts reduced to, let's just say it's $8,000. They'll get it down to $3,900, about half or more. They'll get those debts reduced down, but then they're going to charge you $10,000 to do it. That emergent debt relief that you need to get out of because you can't pay your bills, you just got out of it, but you added $10,000 onto the payment that you're going to make to pay it and settle. Not only that, then at the end on their credit report, it says on there that the account was closed, which is a derogative action, which means they can look and see why it was closed. And normally it is because an unpaid debt that was settled after so long of not paying. What do you think a bank's going to do with that when you go in and ask for a loan? You didn't pay them, so we're not giving you money because you ain't going to pay us. It's just the history proves it. You can see this from how far that the fraud of stealing that from the creditor has now affected other people paying for it and things. Here's another example of thou shalt not steal. This is another one we got going on. People love living in a civilized country without supporting the institutions that keep the country civilized. Although we should pray that the rapture comes every April the 14th. We are under the command of Christ in Matthew 22:21 that on April 15th we are to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. But we should pray that the rapture comes on April the 14th. Then you wouldn't have to pay. Now think about that in your mind. The church being called away and taken out of here in the blink of an eye and the world destroyed. You don't even have to pay none of your taxes on April the 15th. But tax evasion is a big one. How many people you think actually just don't pay their taxes? There's a ton of people that don't pay them for years. Years. There's people that don't pay them for 5 years. And then they go back and have to file an appeal for back taxes and work out a payment plan with penalty. But this is stealing. Right here. This is another form of theft that people are committing. All right. Now, Dylan had Colossians 3:22 through 24. Tell us what that says.
Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ.
So, obeying all your things your masters according to the flesh. Now, there's one more thou shalt not steal defrauding that goes on that people do that is actually breaking the commandment. And this one, I bet you'll never have thought of. Most people never look at this as stealing, but this is a real thing. So, here's one good one. Those that defraud their employer what is due, they show up late and they leave early. Yet they expect to be paid for a full day's work. They take an extra 5 on their 15-minute break. They take an extra 20 on their 30-minute lunch. They, try to not work as hard. They try to work as least as possible, but still make the same amount of money. I had a story of a man one time that came in and applied for a job. And this guy said that this guy came in and applied for a job, and he said, how much is the pay? And the boss told him, he said, I'm going to pay you what you're worth. He said, well, I'm not taking that because I just left a job that I was making more than that. So, just remember that when it comes down into it.
I'm even gonna lie, I was like it on my desk this week.
Yeah, well, that does happen. I mean, get a job you're allowed to sleep if that's the case. But
That was me.
robbing the employer, now this is a big one. Robbing your employer. So an employer pays people to do an expected job, and they give you an expected. Okay, Jimmy and England, it's ain't their work production. Go ahead.
Like out there at work, you talk about the problem, all right? You know what I'm talking about? Going to the bathroom,
30 minutes.
staying 30 minutes to an hour,
Yeah.
playing on the game,
Yeah.
and actually being caught.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's theft. They can charge them with that. That can be charged if they push it to court.
Yeah,
It
but
will
when
go.
you leave children alone, they get into trouble.
Yeah, that's a big tell. You ain't gonna get out of that.
That's legal.
But think about the fact of if you're taking a job and they say that you're a production-based work at England's, they get paid based off their production, do they not? Them jobs. So if they don't do the work, it don't matter. They ain't gonna pay it. But other jobs, especially a salary, that's where we get into the big ones. So if a salary position constitutes you doing a set amount of work and 40 hours pay, and you don't do it, you have stolen from the employer and what they paid you to do. And at the same time, if they work you 70 hours and pay you for 40, now they're robbing you from what they agreed to pay you for the work that you were supposed to do. That's how the theft goes back and forth in the defrauding. But people steal from work when they start doing this right here. Now we hit the hard one. We've talked about all these stealings. There's really a much deeper, harder issue here at the hand. So Haley had Malachi 3 and 8. Tell us what that says.
Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me, that ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings.
Okay, and Christy had Leviticus 27 and 30.
And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land, or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord.
Okay. So he starts asking in Malachi about robbing God. And in that verse, will a man rob God? That's the first thing it says in Malachi 3 and 8. If you read 8 through 15, you'll find a lot more. But yet ye have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed thee? And he says, in tithes and in offerings. Who does the tithe belong to?
Yeah.
Okay? When we withhold what belongs to God, what are we doing?
Robbing.
We're robbing. We're taking it. The same thing comes from another perspective for you for a moment, is who owns this body? God. And you do what with your body? Huh? Okay? So if we do anything else apart from what God's will is for this body, we're stealing from it. If we use this to be of disservice or dishonor, as the Bible mentions, if we use the body to be the wrong vessel for His work, we are stealing from His purpose of what he created us to be, robbing. A lot of people, and I'll say this on tithes, I've heard tithes taught and preached thousands of times and ways all over the internet. There'll be these little short 1-minute clips. We know that the Bible says what about tithing?
10%.
Okay? Tell me where that's at. Just give me a Bible example, not a book. Just tell me an example of where it says that in the Bible.
Remember, Abraham
A
offered
tenth, all right. And then he told somebody else to, who did he tell to go back to Bethel?
Jacob.
Huh?
Okay.
And Jacob told him that he would give him a tenth of all. Same part of the Bible where he goes back to Bethel. There are multiple areas of a tenth. But here's what's interesting about the tenth. It wasn't a tenth of their money. It was a tenth of everything. Everything. If you go back and look at the Bible and what Jacob said, Abraham, all these things, it wasn't, I'm just going to go to my bank account and I'm going to pull 10% out and give it to you. No. Everything. 10%, a tenth of it all. It all belongs to God. And that also was a sign, and when we get into studying the commandment side about property and inheritance and things down, that also was a sign of humility, of giving a tenth of your inheritance, your possessions, your money, whatever all it was, all to God, was also a sign of humility and obedience. But one of the things we come into, and I've seen this tons of different ways, and people online, I get tickled at them, they'll comment. One will say, oh, I just throw in there whatever I think, I'm going to give. Or, and people do that. And if they give more, there's no harm in that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. But some take no account that tithing a tenth. I told this one Sunday here. If you take the 10% of a 24-hour day, how much time is that? 2 hours and about 20-some minutes of every day you're supposed to give back to Him. Every day you're supposed to be communicating, doing something by the book, 2 and almost a half hours every single day. Well, that is 16, 18 hours a week. Is that right? Right around there? Does that sound about right? A week. A tenth of your week, tithing it to the Lord. It all belongs to Him. If we take it and do anything else other than what the owner intended, I'll give you an example of that. If Roger says, let's just use this example. If Roger says, Rick's lawnmower's broke down. And Roger says, well, I got 2. You can use one of them, mow your yard till you get it fixed. And he lets him do that. And tomorrow, he sees Rick mowing 5 other yards and getting paid for it. That was not the agreed intended use of his property, his ownership of what he has. That's robbing him. That's stealing. To do that. There's tons of ways we look at this. Same with God. God's intended use of what He has gave us and allowed us to be over, our private properties, things that we inherited, what His intended use and approved use of that is, anything outside of that border, you're stealing from Him. That's exactly what that is. That's where that goes. This is a good one right here. Anything we steal from others, we're actually stealing it from ourselves. Anything you steal from anybody, you've stolen from yourself, because you're robbing yourself of one of life's most important gifts. What does 1 Timothy 1 and 5 say? Did you have that one?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and tell us what that one
That's
says.
the right one.
That's good.
Now, the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and a good
Conscience. Yeah. A
and
good
faith
conscience.
Huh?
Yeah.
Unfeed.
Yeah. And feed.
Oh.
So, in this part, one of life's most important gifts given to us that we've stolen from ourselves, if we've stolen anything from God or anybody else, we've stolen one thing about this, and that is a clear conscience. The old Apostle Paul encouraged the young pastor in the part that Sharon read to keep the faith, a pure heart, and a pure conscience, a good conscience, which some have actually rejected. And if you go on down to about verse 9, it starts talking about the rejection and people that suffered shipwreck due to the regards to their faith. It talks about that in 1 Timothy 1, verse 9. If you read on down, I think, or verse 19, somewhere in there in those verses, it reads and talks about those things. But even Paul encouraged him that no matter what you do when you pastor these people and whatever you give them, you make sure it's of a pure heart and of a good, clear conscience. That means you're not robbing nobody for your gain. You're not robbing God of His will and purpose to the people that you're ministering to for your own will and your own fame and your own good. Don't do anything for yourself, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing in. You do it with a pure heart and a clear conscience. I seen this right here and I had to use it, but it was just funny. I'll let y'all see this. I seen that and thought that's a pretty good quote. So, what is a clear conscience? There's a lot of truth to that. But what is a clear conscience? If we say we should all have a clear conscience, if you steal from somebody, you've also done it to yourself. But what is a clear conscience? Let's lay that into layman's terms for just a minute. Anybody want to give me an example of what a clear conscience? Haley's in college. Tell me what's a clear conscience?
You haven't done anything to feel bad about.
You should be able to look yourself in the mirror without any shame or any guilt. You should be able to look somebody in the eye and know that they cannot accuse you of any wrongdoing or a wrong that you have not attempted to make right. And one of the things that we get into with this, and this is the truth, when we steal or rob, what's the first thing we usually do?
We lie.
Okay?
Try to hide it.
And if you try to make it right, what do you usually do?
Mess up.
Now, what do you do? If you try to right a wrong, you've done something wrong, you've stolen from somebody, whatever. How do you make that right? What's the first thing people normally do?
Try to make an excuse for it first.
Let's move on. What's next? You're making it harder than it is.
Restore what you stole.
You're going to confess what you done. And that is the first step, but it's not enough. It is a first step, but it's not enough. The Lord requires us. This is where it gets deep on the stealing. Thou shalt not steal. Did you know that the Bible and the Lord requires you to pay restitution?
Mm-hmm.
To right the wrong that you've committed? Which is also to serve as a deterrent to continually do theft on our part. But did you know that the Lord requires restitution? Do you know where that is in the Bible?
Wasn't that one guy that got saved? He said, I'll restore him fourfold.
There is one of those.
What I took from him.
Yeah. What else? Any other examples? I'm going to give you one in Exodus 22. Just real close to where we're at is the restitution information. Look how this works. If you steal an ox and either slaughter it or sell it, you're required to pay back the owner 5. If you steal the sheep and either slaughter it or sell it, you're required to pay back 4 for the one you took. If the ox or sheep was found alive, the thief was required to return the animal and pay back double. Money stolen, the thief had to pay back the original amount and double, as listed in Exodus 22. I like this. We should implement this back. If you take something, you got to bring me 5 more. And some things you take, you got to bring me 4 more. Or if I find it and it's still there, you got to give me that and double. That's a pretty good way to work, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
But there was restitution required and listed by the Bible days. An easy example for you tonight is the story that Roger just glimpsedly mentioned. We know about a man, a short feller, matter of fact, that was a particular job. What was his job?
Tax collector.
And what did he do in that tax collecting job?
Charge them more than what they.
You could charge whatever percentage you wanted on top of their taxes. So if Roger owed $100 in taxes, I could charge him $300 and he had to pay it. And then I can do whatever with the $200 I wanted. That was how the tax collecting way was with the tax collectors. So the old story is, after all this, the Lord comes. There's all these people around. Short feller can't see him. And since short fella can't see him, he climbed into a sycamore tree. And at this point, the Lord comes up to him and he tells him one specific thing. What's the main part of the story he tells him in the tree?
Make haste and come down.
Yeah, and why?
I'm going home with you.
I'm going to your house. And he goes to his house. People started to grumble. If you read this part of the Bible, people started to grumble when they saw the Lord going into Zacchaeus' house. They really did. They started throwing a fit and grumbling. And he, as the Bible says, he humbled himself and he pledged, now get this, he pledged to give half of his estate to support the poor. And then he said he would make restitution and give 4 times as much to anybody he stole from. So he's going to take half of what he's got, of the estate, of everything he's got. He's going to give half of it to the poor. And then anything he stole from anybody, he's going to give them back 4 times. There's your 4 times back to the Exodus law of how that they had to pay back restitution for those they wronged. And this also is a method, many Bible scholars put it, that this is also a way of Jesus interpreting that he's pledging a confession of believing in the Lord and who he is and what he's there and what he stands for, because of him pledging to right the wrong and make not only a confession of wronging what he's done and what he's took, but he's also doing restitution to make it right by giving half of his stuff to the poor and 4 times of whatever he took from somebody, he's giving it back. Ginger has Hebrews 13:5. What did that tell us?
Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he hath said, I will never leave you nor forsake
Okay.
thee.
What's the Bible say that you should do? Well, let's back up. What does the Bible say about the love of money?
Root of evil.
Okay.
The root of all evil.
The root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. And it also is the form of greed. We know that it's a form of greed. So what about the fact of keeping your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have? Most all theft comes from a person that is not content. If you look at every crime and all these people that commit a crime, they were not content. There are people that steal that don't need it. They just want the thrill of stealing it and know that they don't. There are people that steal because of something they want that they can't have. But everything that they do in the form of stealing, all of that effort comes back to the point of being discontented. There's always something being discontented with not having something, not wanting something. And when we get into the very word, now we take you back to thou shalt not steal. One word is the whole thing the Lord's laying on you when he says thou shalt not steal. We're not talking about just property and possessions and cars and stuff. It's being honest. When you don't be honest with God and what you have or haven't done to him, now we've committed some fraud. When we've done people wrong and we have never attempted to make it right, we have stolen from them. There's no clear conscience, and we are being dishonest. That, in terms, is against the commandment of stealing. You know that the actual biblical definition of the word honest by the Bible says that the quality of being truthful and sincere, involving a refusal to lie, steal, or deceive. That is the definition of the commandment written, thou shalt not steal. A fundamental moral virtue that includes integrity, fairness, and straightforwardness. Beyond just not lying, it involves being true to oneself, acting consistently with one's values, and taking responsibility for one's actions and feelings. And it's broke down that all of thou shalt not steal. Most of the churches in the area, or everywhere if you went, and you asked them what that meant, they'd say, don't take anybody's stuff. Don't take anybody's stuff. Well, what if you go out and blaspheme their name? What if somebody goes out and says, Robert and Roger don't know what they're doing. I went up there and seen such and such house, and they don't look right, and they've never been there. They've never been there. They're defrauding them. They're taking them and defrauding them. Their name.
Stealing the reputation.
You got it. They're stealing from them. Thou shalt not steal. God gives you what's yours, and you're to tend to it and manage it and make good work of it. But that stealing is not just physical property. The word you should look at with this whole thing is honest. Are you honest? And that is the rule of not stealing, especially with God. If you don't give him a tenth, now think about this for just a moment, and I'll go back to that tithing for a second. God gives 100% to you, and he only asks you for 10% back. That's a pretty good deal. I mean, you think about it. If you could go in the grocery store and get $100 worth of groceries and it cost you 10, that's a heck of a deal. You think about it, you could roll out the door with $1,000 of groceries for $100. That is one heck of a deal. And that is the tithe God is asking for, a tenth of your time, what you've worked for, what he's gave you, so on and so forth. And people don't do it. When you don't do that, what are we doing? You're robbing God. You're stealing. You're taking things that he has given you and giving you 100%. God gives us all. There's no limitations on what God gives us. There is nobody got any more or less power or access to the Lord than anybody else, giving you all that you may be able to stand and withstand. We're giving all this stuff. 100% comes from God, and we're only asked to give 10 back. That's a heck of a deal. You won't find that nowhere. You won't find that deal nowhere. But that's an awful good one to ask about honest, if we're not stealing our tithes and other things we go to. Sharon, tell Trump you'll be busy for a few more minutes. So you look at things, and honestly, that's the truth of it, is that stealing seems simple until it goes back to you're talking to God. You're not talking to me. You're not talking to the police, and you're not before a judge. You're talking to God. He's the one that wrote the commandment. That's the one you're answering to. Now when we talk about stealing, we've got a whole new problem. Whole new problem. Anybody got anything to add to that?
You know, some people, and I'm sure there's some Christians, I know of one, you know, they get something, well, forget to pay for something in their buggy.
Okay.
Go out to the car. Well, nobody will know what God is, but they forget God is watching.
He knows it.
Mhm.
He gave you the money to buy it. He gave you the money to pay for it.
Yeah. But
And you choose not to. Yeah. And then you choose not to go back and make it right.
That's right.
Yeah. If we were in Bible days, you'd have to go back and pay them 4 times, 5 times, or double. See how it went then compared to now. Even the New Testament ways about giving. It is better to give than to receive. So there's a lot to this when it comes to not stealing and being honest. But that probably goes on. They say that the self-checkouts is unreal. Unreal. People scan one and put 2 or 3 in the bag.
They said in Marshtown they had to close them.
They quit. The dollar stores here has stopped. They stopped doing it here on the dollar stores.
They need to, it's the reason they get them people.
Yeah. You know, used to...
My dad will not go through self-checkout. He
You know-
says he don't work there, he's not going.
You know, they used to, when you was honestly going through the checkout lane, you know, they used to have a mirror on the other side of the lane so they could see the bottom of your buggy. They could look down while your buggy was coming through and see if anything was under it that you didn't get out. Not intentional, just to make sure you didn't forget something. But the cashier could see that mirror on the other side of the lane that you come through so they could see if there's anything under the buggy or not taken out of the buggy. So it was a test of honesty. How many times has people been tried by God to just see if they'll do what they're supposed to do? How,
All through the Old Testament.
all through. It's all the way. But you're only asked, now look at it, you're only asked to give a tenth. Of whatever you're given, a tenth. You get 100 and you only pay 10 back. You can't beat that deal. You won't find that nowhere.
They probably don't even miss it.
No. They won't know it's coming. If God knew you really needed that, and that's where we get into some things about tithing, and people talk about people not having money to buy food and all that. That's a different conversation. I'm just talking about tithing in its definition itself. But you know what I find funny is that most people that have no money to buy food put their money in the plate on Sunday at the church. That's what's interesting to me about those people that don't have money to buy food, pay their electric bill, stuff like that. When they come in the church doors, every time they've got money they're putting in that plate. you watch the difference in how people view perspectives of that. Anybody else got anything tonight? Any prayer requests?